Hey, Sox fans. Welcome to Good Guys Talk Back, a local fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast, hosted by Nick Murawski and Hester.
Yeah, hey, Sox fans. Welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back. Hey, it's episode 310. I am Nick Murawski, and this is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. This is season 7. We've talked about a lot of bad White Sox baseball, so why should it change now? What a weekend it was for our Southsiders. A whole bunch of great things that we're going to get into. This show was written by Pat Hester, which we're going to talk about in just a bit, which I'm excited. We're in the month of June. So the nightmare is almost over, but always a treat to have you with us on our live show here. We do this 9:15 on Sunday nights on the Good Guys Talk Back YouTube channel. Please just subscribe. It costs nothing. Pass it along. It really means a ton. And the audio available absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. Welcome, Sydney, Peyton, and Josh already jumping in. Love to have you here right away. With me, as always, my best friend, diehard Sox fan, Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Hey, buddy. Good to talk to you. Happy Sunday to you. This morning, as I do most Sunday mornings, spent a good hour and a half today. Long service at Messiah Lutheran. Shout out to all the Messiah Lutheranites out there, and welcome back, Pastor Kurt. He was on the IL for a little while with a heart. So that's a good thing to come back from. Right. So welcome back, Pastor Kurt. Mm-hmm. And as I go through the things that I'm thankful for, Nick, I'm obviously thankful for you. I'm thankful for a lot of things in my life, family and friends and health and all that good stuff. But I find myself thanking God for the Colorado Rockies, as they have won 9 games this year. They're 9-50, which is not good.
And 9-50.
9-50. So as I'm thanking God, we don't have kneelers in Lutheran churches, but I got down and I kneeled right there on the floor, and I thanked the Lord for the Rockies. And I thought about something you and I had talked about maybe a couple episodes ago, how it feels different this year with this White Sox team. And, even though the record is at that point was exactly the same as it was last year, it feels different. And I wonder now, as I look back on the last couple weeks, does it only feel different because we're used to it? And is it just because we're we're blinded by a new manager and younger players and less of the old stuff? And maybe we've just become immune to the losing. I mean, you get swept in Baltimore. Baltimore's not been playing great baseball this year. I guess should I be irate? No, I guess I shouldn't be irate, but I think I've gotten to the point where it's just like, okay, yeah, we lost again. We got swept again, and we took a game in New York, and it is what it is. The Mets are a good team, and you're just rolling around in this body bag and just getting eaten with oranges. I mean, it's craziness, right? But so tell me, like, as we reflect on the last couple of weeks, to you, does it really still feel different, or is it just you've become used to it?
I can't get the image of rolling around in a body bag out of
I hope you don't ever have that experience.
Pelted with oranges. How should we torture this gentleman? I've got an idea. Let's put him in a body bag, have him roll around, trying to get out of the body bag. And as he's trying to figure that out, we'll pelt him with oranges. And where should we do it? I don't know. Somewhere. Let's go to the south side of Chicago. They've had a horrible baseball team for a while. Yeah, man, I think that's a wonderful question, and I think it's worth bringing up. Every so often this year, with the records the way they are, and here the Sox are 18-41, 20 and a half games back already in that division that. Oh, thank goodness we're in the AL Central. We don't have to do much to compete in there. 20 and a half games back. Detroit's done a lot of great things over the years. They've done things that I've wished the White Sox have done. And we'll always talk about that AJ Hinch thing. And it's more than just AJ Hinch, right? They've got some players that have been hitting that they really needed to, and they've put together a pretty hungry team. And we're going to see them on the south side at 35th and Shields. Detroit is next, and then Kansas City. But so back to your question, oh boy, Pat had to leave. Hopefully he jumps back in. There might have been a tech issue on Pat's end. We'll get him back hopefully very soon. So Pat, asks, why does it feel different this year in 2025 when you've only won 18 games? And I'm looking at the roster here, the lineup from today's game against Baltimore. They got swept in Baltimore. Baltimore was a team that had maybe one or two more wins than the White Sox when we started this series. Baltimore, a team that really frustrating. They've got guys like Adley Rutschman that were not performing up to their snuff. Baltimore, a team that has won 90 games a few times recently. Expectations high in Baltimore. Guys are underperforming. And to get just swept, I get it. There's some close games, but Baltimore not far off from us. We are absolutely now the second worst team in all of baseball, if that even really matters. Those types of, labels. It's just, what are you doing to get better? What are you doing as an organization and as a franchise to get out of this hell, really? And when we're going to talk about, the James Shield trade, the anniversary's coming up, and Rick Hahn was talking recently, and, all these, let go, that stuff we'll talk about in today's episode, but it brings back all of those bad memories. Welcome back, Pat. I was just talking a little bit about Baltimore not too far off from us when this series started. I mean,
you're right.
We were like one win better. And why should I still feel like things are better? I mean, you got Mydroth, Talkman, Vargas, Benintendi, Sosa, Robert, Caro, Rojas, Palacios. I mean, of those guys in today's lineup, I mean, who's really going to be a part of this team moving forward? That's going to bring this team. So even if they went ahead and did some serious damage against Baltimore, this is where my mind's at. Is I'm really looking at guys that we're going to build around, guys that have a future with the Sox. And maybe you can't even look at anybody that's on this in this lineup. And you've got to look at, what's happening in the farm system. We talked about Sosa hitting the ball well. There's defensive miscues. Mydroth kind of brings a little bit of excitement, a little bit of energy. Talkman's been hitting the ball really well. I don't know what his future. I don't know if we're necessarily building around a Michael Talkman. Like, we need to have this guy. Vargas is an interesting situation. He was 0 for in Sunday's finale, but he has been playing better. He's a guy that I could see, Pat. Vargas might stick around for a little while.
I wrote down Vargas, and I just wonder if it's smoke and mirrors. I mean, how there's going to be some valleys that are ahead for him, right? And at what point do we kind of figure out who he is? That'll be interesting, right? He's been on a heater, right? And that's fun to watch, right? When a guy's in the zone like that, I guess you would say. But I wouldn't have not, again, I'm not going to pretend that I have an ear to the ground on most of these guys when they're coming up and, what their backgrounds are, what have you. But I didn't see that coming, what he has put together over the last several weeks. But I don't think there's anybody in this in this lineup right now, Nick, that you go, that's a build around guy. Now there might be guys that are here, right? That are here when and if this team is ever successful again. I could see that.
That's a good point, Pat. There are guys that'll be fillers. I think there's definitely guys on this roster and in this lineup that you need these types of guys that we have right now. But I don't see anybody right now that's like, we've got to retain this guy. And I felt that way about Garrett Crochet. I knew what the Sox were going to do, and I kind of knew what they had to do based on the history of the organization. But it was such a shame because Garrett Crochet seemed like a guy that you needed to have as your lockdown ace, and then you could bring in some younger arms and have that anchor. But Pat, I think again, I go back to, for me as a fan, for a Sox fan, it's the celebration of 125. Maybe I am too invested in the nostalgia and the the anniversaries and bringing back Nancy Faust and all the giveaways, and I found myself just kind of like being on a little bit of a memory lane type of thing. When I'm at the game and I'm thinking about the White Sox and they flood you with all these different, highlights and greatest moments of the 125 years. I think not having Pedro Grifol around, which I thought was a joke to begin with when he was hired, and he did no favors to help himself or the organization. The fact that Hahn and Williams are gone, but Getz I don't believe in at all. So I've got that thing I've got to figure out as a fan. I think Venable brings something definitely different, and it seems like guys like playing for him. Maybe it's the, hey, most of the dead weight from that lie of that rebuild, that things were going to go so differently, and this is going to be a team that's going to be up there in the ALCS and on and on. A lot of that dead weight, that hope and that promise is gone.
Yeah.
And it just feels fresh, I guess. But, you could put yourself in a new body bag and get whipped with new oranges. And would you say, oh, the smell of this body bag is a little, this leather is a little bit,
this is fresh. This is right off the rack.
This is crisp. Oh, this is really, and those oranges, those feel a little different. You're still getting beat down with, I hate to say it, I don't have a lot of clarity. I don't think anybody does. I mean, we'll touch on that with the whole James Shields anniversary trade coming up. You think you don't know what you got.
Yeah.
Other organizations might have a little bit more intel and make you look stupid. The Sox, do themselves no favors with how they handle themselves and how they've developed and scouted over the years. But I think you have to clearly look at the future, but after what we went through previously, that's you have to be cautious. I mean, to say the least.
I think it's the opportunity to step back and look at it and go, okay, there has been change, both front office change and player and personnel change, but has there been an upgrade since those changes? I would argue at this point, and again, it's very early on in his career, I would say that Chris Getz is not an upgrade over a Rick Hahn or a Kenny Williams in terms of making baseball decisions. Maybe I'm wrong in that. Maybe I'm giving Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams way too much credit, but it's different. It does not mean it's better, right? Yeah. You could say the same thing about Venable. Venable is different than Pedro. Does not mean it's better than Pedro. Now, we may align more with some of his philosophies, and maybe he doesn't say as many moronic things, but it doesn't mean that he's a better baseball manager. And you could certainly say that about the players. The players on paper, compared to what we've had over the past couple of years, are definitely less talented. Now, have they performed better? No. but
well,
they shouldn't be performing better because they don't have as much talent as those guys.
Exactly. So the crop that we, did away with and they left, TA and Moncada and Jimenez and Lynn and Giolito and Grandal. I know I'm going to be, missing guys. There was so much expectation and hope and prognostication and these guys are can't miss, and wow, look at the back of their baseball card, or too many people have said these are going to be studs. Cease, throw that guy in, of course, and we discussed Garrett Crochet. That the letdown was so great as a fan, speaking just from my perspective. I had such high hopes that when they failed to even come close to those expectations and hopes, and the team never reached that, I fell so deep. Right now, I don't have really any expectations about these players. So the drop off is like just kind of like tumbling off of a curb. I don't
in a body bag.
Exactly. In a body bag. Now you're like, oh, I didn't even get scraped up by any of the gravel or anything.
Think of this cozy body bag.
This cozy
always in.
So, so that maybe that plays with your psyche.
Yeah.
And I can only speak for myself. And I think you and I are kind of on the same wavelength. I know there's a lot of fans I talk to that are like, garbage is garbage.
Yeah.
And this team is garbage. This franchise is garbage. They can roll out whatever anniversary stuff, whatever 125-year nonsense that's lipstick on a pig. I need to see a better product. Stop the smoke and mirrors stuff right now. But that's all they have to go off of right now is advertising and marketing and trying to pull on those heartstrings of the 05 team and everything else that you and I and others have experienced as Sox fans for so many years.
So what do you do in 2026 when you don't have that? Because this thing isn't getting turned around in the near future, right, Nick? So
that's a great. I mean, I had an email. It was just probably a AI generated or whatever email last week. I forgot to even mention it. The ticket rep that had contacted me before the season started to let me know that the Sox had somehow held on to all of these monies of mine and that I should probably get this flex package. He was new to me. It's not something I was working with. I get an email that he's gone. Like his last day was, I think, the last week, and that I should be expecting to be contacted very soon by a new ticket rep.
Okay.
Now that turnover is great there. There's always turnover in that world, but it can't be an easy sell.
Oh, God.
And 2026 is good. That's a great point. Nothing's getting better in 2026. It's not like all of a sudden they're gonna, open up the vault and like, now we're going to spend. Now we're really going to try. Enough is enough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be another tough year, and you don't have all of these other anniversary things and stuff to lean on to build it up. So who knows, man?
Unless you celebrate the 25 years of the first half of 2006. And you say, like, what could you celebrate from the first half of 2006? Like there was a ring ceremony, right? Or
I'm sure there'll be something for when Jim, the legend, the White Sox legend, Jim Thome was brought to the franchise in 06. We'll probably have a whole like a parade or something that will happen.
You hate
that.
Jim Thome.
I don't. No, not at all. He's a wonderful person. And
you hate him as much as you hate the zoo, which I found out earlier today that you hate the zoo.
It's just it's just hasn't. I've never been at like a like Zootopia or Madagascar, like where animals are really I haven't.
Those are movies, Nick. Those are children's movies.
I haven't been at a really raucous, like lively zoo. It just seems like there's just a lot of sleeping, or you can't find an animal, or there it is, 300 yards away, crouching by that stump. But no, I do not hate Jim Thome. I just find it always fascinating how much he's been built up as this White Sox legend.
True.
Because
you would like to have Jim Thome live in a zoo, I think, actually, crouched in the corner by his stump.
I think for year 125, they should bring back all the legends and just have them on display.
All the stumps? Or all the legends. Sorry.
And he would be right there. I'm sure he's on. I'm sure he's featured quite a bit, and he's there, shaking hands and doing whatever he can.
Is he an ambassador? Is Jim Thome an ambassador? Or
I thought he had a different type. I thought he had a different type of role. I don't know if it was in the scouting world or something, but nothing like eating dipping dots inside the bird exhibit. Yeah, I think that's just even just kind of wild. There's birds flying all over the place. We talked about the geese at Brookfield Zoo. That's the most exciting part of it, because they're following you around. They're everywhere. That's the most life out of the animals.
All right. Can I say I'm going to defend the zoo for real quick? Okay.
Go ahead, man.
I don't mean to, because there's not much to talk about in terms of White Sox baseball, but I was fascinated today that you went to the zoo with your son and your lovely wife and some neighbors, and that was great. I'll tell two things about my life in the zoo. Couple things. When I was a kid, I shared a room with my older brother, Jeff. When he would say, "What do you want to talk about?" as we're laying there in bed, and I would inevitably always say the zoo. I love the zoo. That's one. Right. My mom was a chaperone for a field trip, and we went to Brookfield Zoo, and our group saw every animal that day. The only group that saw every animal except one, and it was the very famous walrus that next week passed away.
Yeah, large.
So I missed out on the walrus. So those are my two zoo stories. Big fan of the zoo. Love the zoo.
Okay. The Moldoramas are fun. As a collector, it's like, okay, see what we get.
What a Moldorama?
Yeah, those Moldoramas. I think they might be $4 or $5 now, but they were like $1 something years ago. They've got those little like wax like figurines. It's got Brookfield Zoo on it. You watch it getting made in that like kind of bubble machine. They've got a dolphin, polar bear. I think there's a lion, a sea lion. They're stationed throughout the zoo, and it's like your little souvenir, your collectible.
I'm just more focused on the animals. You're all about the shiny things and the Moldoramas, which I didn't even know that was a word. So that's what I learned today.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I've been to some good ones. I always the one out in Arizona, like Safari World. When I was out there for spring training a couple of years ago.
Is it really called Safari World?
Something like that.
Okay.
But they've plenty of space. They've got this really cool train that takes you all through the zoo. So you get to see a ton of animals, at once, and a lot of life in the animals. So
not the sleeping ones you saw today. All right, I digress. No more. Let's get back to riveting White Sox.
Yeah, let's get back to this team, our team, the Chicago White Sox. For goodness sake, a horrible series in Baltimore, and Luis Robert Jr. Again, just baffles me. Absolutely baffles me. Baffles so many people. We talked about him on the last episode. He admits he knows what he needs to do. He realizes he has no value. He's being handsomely paid and has been, and he's finally healthy, and we're getting nothing. Zero production, really. He's fast. He's really fast. He could track balls down in the outfield. He could steal some bases, but we got to have absolutely more than that. He got dropped down to the 7th hole. He went 0 for 2 with a walk and a strikeout, hitting 180.
Woo, it's not good.
180. And Vaughn has been sent to Charlotte to just get some change of scenery. I haven't really tracked what Vaughn has been doing. Could Robert Jr. get that treatment?
Wow.
Can you? I mean, just wrap your brain around that. Or don't. I mean, because that's sickening.
It's a very interesting question, Nick. Should it happen? Probably so. If you're going to expect to try and get anything for him, you need him to get right. Okay.
And fast.
Right. So it's put him down there, let him start, I don't know, feeling good about himself. If nothing else, just hopefully he can, rip off of some AAA pitching and just feel good about himself and put a stretch together when he comes back that is somewhat sellable. Because right now it's not, you're paying, you're getting pennies on the dollar if you try and trade him. So I guess that's the only way to go. And what do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose. He's not showing teams anything up here. So you might as well, put all your what's on the table and say, this is what we have to do and send the guy down. I don't know. I'd really no other choice.
Organization if they did that, I really would. I would say that's different. Okay,
now that's something we haven't seen.
That is different.
You make a compelling argument, Chris Gatz. I've never seen anybody put his genitals right there on the table
and send Robert down. Can you imagine that? That would be. That would definitely be news, but it wouldn't be shocking. I mean, and that's the pathetic part of it. There's just so much bad. And this was a guy that we knew what the future was going to be like for Luis Robert Jr. And if he could just get going here and get out of May, on a streak with the warm weather here, he's healthy. He's clearly shown his speed, which I give him credit for. He knows he has to demonstrate that. And if your bat's not going, then you're going to have to play defense and you're going to have to swipe bags. But yeah, no one's given us anything. It's such a sad situation. So I don't know.
It's easy to say that it couldn't have gone worse, right? As we're looking back into the beginning of the season, it's like, well, what do you think we could get? And what could happen here? And we're speculating and we're talking.
We're holding out as an organization for like top prospects.
Yeah.
I need your two top prospects or don't even come to the conversation.
I wonder if you look back, and I think we'll touch on it later on, is like, was there were probably multiple trades on the table for him before the season started that were lesser value trades for us that maybe got passed by Chris Getz, gambling on the fact that, he was hoping for this guy that's a 5-tool quote unquote player to play up to his potential. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't come to fruition. So another thing you're just holding on to that really is not going to pan out for you. And it's going to be an unfortunate end to this story, I'm sure, in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah. We will continue to talk about it more as it's such for me as a Sox fan, and I think everybody, such a newsworthy for all the wrong reasons. You kind of have to, like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. It's just a long line of so many other could have been superstar, should have been superstar. We'll talk about another, a guy that was let go by the Angels in a little bit. Before I talk about some positives that might help us at the trade deadline. You obviously didn't catch any of the TV, any of the telecasts lately. At least I don't think you have.
No.
But Dan Plesac from, I believe, the MLB network,
mm-hmm.
from what I understand too, he grew up a White Sox fan. I think out of Indiana, pitched for the Brewers and maybe a couple other teams. Dan Plesac has been filling in for Steve Stone the last couple of series. And, my dad said something to me maybe a week ago, or a few days ago, like, who was that guy in for Stone talking with Schriffen. I said, "Oh, Dan Plesac, he's filling in." That was a good listen,
Mm-hmm.
and I agree. Dan Plesac was really good. He did a really nice job. I didn't catch a ton of the telecast this past weekend, but anytime I had it on, he was with Schriffen. I think he probably was like, who is this guy? But like made Schriffen sound good, which I think is always an excellent compliment to an analyst.
Yeah.
If you could make your partner look good, somebody like John Schriffen, good on you. And Plesac he just had a very comfortable way of talking, brought some really interesting insight, into the pitching world. And I just felt like anytime Schriffen threw something at him, he was ready to go with something. He never was, caught off guard. And not that I'm saying like, Stone needs to hang it up, but I enjoyed having Plesac around.
Yeah, Danny Plesac, I believe he did pre and post back in the day for the Cubs, and then he went to MLB Network. I don't know how long ago he was on Cubs pre and post. Then he was a frequent guest a lot on ESPN 1000. I've heard him and seen bits and pieces of him on the MLB Network. He is good. Dan knows the game. He knows pitching, obviously. He's very entertaining, right? He's got a personality to him. So
yeah.
I didn't get to hear him, but it does not surprise me. And I'd be a huge advocate of him being, part of some sort of broadcast team, whether it's radio or TV for the Chicago White Sox, just because, again, I do know that he is a Sox fan. He's from the area, and he's an entertaining, affable listen, right? It's something that
he had a good cadence.
Yeah,
he had a nice way about him. You could tell he was comfortable, and with a team like the Sox, I think you have to be very smooth. You have to know how to keep things going. Because there wasn't a lot of offense. How do I keep these conversations happening? And he had the benefit of kind of introducing himself almost to the fan base. But after a certain while, fans are like, okay, you've been here now for like 2 series, but he never felt awkward. It never felt uncomfortable. And Sydney said in the comments here, which I appreciate, that Plesac will be back in July when the White Sox play the Dodgers in LA.
Well, I wonder, because Stoney got signed again for this year. Is he like doing like a year by year thing? I wonder, or because he takes some time off during the year, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I don't know that relationship is fantastic with
it can't be. I mean, and he's got to say, this is a tough team to cover. I'm not in love with my, my partner. It's probably a grind on him.
And
I was
he be a little prickly, right? He's been prickly. He was prickly with the Cubs before that. Fell apart, and he's
an opinionated guy.
Yeah.
He's so I thought I was kind of, hopefully there's no health issues. I was surprised he wasn't at the Baltimore series. Stone Cy Young Award winner, always talked favorably about his times with Palmer and the rest of the Baltimore Orioles, Earl Weaver. So I thought for sure, he'd be there for that series, but
you would think so, but not.
Yeah, but not. So Sox are home for the next couple series. So we'll see if he's back in the booth calling that Detroit series. So, Robert Jr., you can't bank on much coming back. As here we are in June, I'm already starting to think like, who can we potentially flip or because Eric Fetty was the guy last year, right? Eric Fetty really caught everybody by surprise. That was a good signing because what we got out of it, he was involved in that whole 3-team trade, Cardinals and Dodgers and White Sox. And at the end of the day, we ended up getting Vargas. And Vargas could be something here. I didn't think much of him. He's put some work in. He's changed his swing, and it has benefited greatly. He has seen such improvement. So that Could it be this Adrian Hauser guy that, they signed, during the day and he goes pitches in the evening and lights out, and he's had some really good starts lately? Could it be, Davis Martin? Could it be Burke? I think there's some arms there that we shouldn't get too comfortable with as Sox fans, because
which is a shame, because if you're going to not pay pitchers, you need young pitchers that are cost friendly. Yeah. But if that's the only thing that you have the deal of, that you have a glut of, is young pitching, then I guess you're right. You have to get used to the fact that several of them won't be here. It's a shame, because if you continue to develop that pitching, you should then take the assets that you would probably have to invest in pitching and reallocate those funds to bats, right? Or you don't have to get 9 bats, but keep the young guys and look at what. And I don't know what the. And again, maybe I'm just talking myself into circles, knowing that this team won't invest in much anyway. But if you have a savings because you don't have to pay a lot of for pitching as it is right now, couldn't you say, okay, this is our budget, let's go take these funds and let's kind of even out this lineup a little bit, get some thunder in here. We have to find a way to score. I'm going to guess that they probably score 2.5 to 3 runs a game without even watching much baseball this year. I look at the box scores and I see not many more than a run or two every game. Yeah. So there has to be a way that you put an emphasis on bringing in more offense. I would hate for it to have to be because you're trading pitching prospect for hitting prospect. I'd like it to be you're going out and buying something that's a known product.
Well, that's the whole, eventually you have to stop. You got to get off this hamster wheel.
Yeah.
You've got to start buying. You can't constantly think I'm going to flip for this or I'm going to. If Vargas keeps up at the rate he's going, he could be like a Tommy Pham kind of situation. I know Pham was packaged in all of that, but maybe Vargas is packaged with somebody, because it team's like, look, we need pop down the stretch here. Vargas can play some infield. We want that bat. That's also a situation. Like, I think the Sox are in nobody's untouchable.
Yeah. I just feel like if you continue to try and play that, as you mentioned it, flip game, it's you've got several holes in your boat and you keep trying to plug them all with your finger. Yeah. And you got another leak over here. And I got to take my finger off of this hole and plug that hole up all the time. Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're underwater all the time.
That is exactly that's a great way of explaining White Sox baseball over the last several years. Just constantly, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. I don't know how many more analogies we could find. We probably can. You're not solving the real issue. The real issue is to go buy your talent, spend some damn money, develop some players, so you don't constantly deplete. It's like you build up for a little while and then you're depleted. And a guy. So let's just talk about it. You mentioned in the notes when we were, because I said, Pat, you're going to have to help me out here. You came through with some great suggestions, for tonight. And I had seen this Rick Hahn video surface of him on MLB Network, I believe. Why in God's name they decided to have Rick Hahn? That would be the last person I would want to try to pick someone's brain. Let's get this fool that just completely, did nothing for the White Sox. Let's get him. I'd love to hear what he has to say. And Rick Hahn comes on.
Do you think that's how they brought him on? Here's a fool that did nothing. Come on out, Rick.
Well, the title card, underneath his name, the graphic, just fool GM. So and I just can't stand his voice and the way he puts words together to form sentences. It's all bad. But here we are, days away from the big June 4th, 2016, James Shields acquisition for Fernando Tatis Jr. And Hahn was asked about, his biggest regret. And of course, everybody knew it. And he started to discuss the Fernando Tatis Jr. and set the groundwork, which during that time, at the beginnings of 2016, the season, I was in Washington, D.C. still. We were a couple months away from moving back to Chicago, and I was following the team from a distance closely with MLB TV, and I was getting all the games, and I'm like, we're 23-10 to start the season. Wow, Matt Latos and struggling John Danks. And I don't know if this is sustainable, which Rick Hahn mentioned in his little time on being interviewed, but this is exciting, and okay. So they went to go get an arm, and it was James Shields, and we traded Fernando Tatis Jr. for him. And what Hahn was talking about is that Padres didn't even want Tatis Jr. They wanted who? Eric Johnson and another arm.
Yeah.
And the
which
Sox
he didn't mention.
He didn't mention the other arm, but Hahn said that they weren't willing to give two arms. So eventually it came down to Fernando Tatis Jr. and Sox were just like, sure.
They thought they were laughing all the way to the bank on it too.
Right. And boy, that Shields thing. I mean, he was a bulldog. He ate some innings up, but man, nowhere near what we wanted. And of course, we all know what happened with that season, and that was the end of the Ventura era, and the rebuild began, and just a crumble. And we were stuck with James Shields for a while, and Tatis Jr. has gone on to do great things. I think he was a teenager at the time when he was with the White Sox, and anything, knowing the way the Sox scout and develop, they probably didn't know what to make of him. Just like, well, he's got a popular name. We know that name. I don't know. It's going to probably be nothing. So we'll just, and the Padres thought otherwise, and here we are. But, I feel like that's kind of where the roller coaster started, and here we are in 2025, 9 years later, almost to the day. And we always talk now as Sox fans, like, one division title, a berth in 2020. So what did we get? 2 playoff wins and a division title, you know? And that's the reality.
The most troubling thing about that 2-minute clip that I saw on Twitter today, and if you haven't seen it, you can go on social media. I'm sure you'll find it. You can probably find the full interview. I don't remember what outlet that was on, but it doesn't really matter. We don't make any money for this, Nick. I don't have to give anybody any accolades for anything. We're not governed by the FCC. So whoever it was that did this interview with whatever podcast or show, the most troubling piece of it for me was when Rick said, well, we felt like we had to push our chips in because Robin was kind of unsure about being here in the first place. And if they didn't win, he was going to leave under his own, for his own reasons. Again, reinforcing the fact that you had a manager that you had to beg to come and manage here that wasn't suited or fit for the position, that you had to try and convince to stick around, that really had no interest in developing a team. Right? He just, whatever bill of goods he was sold on, we just need a body down there and you can be that body because you're a fan favorite type guy. You mortgaged your future and decision making based on a manager that wasn't worth being around in the first place. So you continue to trip over your own feet managerial wise. You could go back to what's it, La Russa? Again, these decisions you make on managers that are drastically changing the direction of your team in very negative ways. So You mentioned, we talked about it. AJ Hinch, that was a guy that we had ready to rock and roll. We made a different decision, and look at where it led us. Now, I don't know if you hire AJ Hinch, it means that, things are wonderful, and because they weren't wonderful for the Tigers when he first got there. But it's seemingly he's gotten the rig is back on the road there. Mm-hmm. So again, I just can't understand, with baseball in particular, because there's so many games. And the manager has his tentacles on so many different decisions throughout a game, probably, as important or maybe more important than an NFL football coach. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit over exaggerated, but that's the part that was most, I'll say, vexing to me.
Yeah,
was the fact that you made the decision for years of your team's future based on Robin Ventura being your manager.
You're right. He should have never been the manager. I'm really sad that people who didn't get to watch him play, fans that didn't understand how great of a third baseman, how clutch he was with the bat, they didn't see that. They didn't know that of Robin Ventura. They just knew the failing manager, a guy that should have never been manager. He was, forced into a position. I don't think the franchise knew what in the world they were going to do after Ozzie demanded, to be traded or let go to the Marlins. And it's like, well, let's go with another player. Let's go with another fan favorite.
Yep.
We'll see if we can, catch lightning in a bottle. And it was just not good. And you're right. When you have that lack of direction, and you're not proactive, you're just reactionary as an organization, front office down, owner down. That's maddening from a fan's perspective, because the lack of respect that you have for not only your organization, but the folks that pay and follow and watch and commit their time, this fan base, that's really troubling that you put that zero effort into that. And that has been the same thing with Gatz. Well, what effort did you put in finding a real general manager that knew what the hell they were doing? What serious effort did you put in to find a manager when it came to Pedro Grifol? Well, what did you really do? The La Russa thing, I get it. We won a division under La Russa, but Jerry didn't bring La Russa in to win a division title.
Yeah.
He brought him in to win a World Series. And I don't even know if La Russa was healthy enough to begin his managerial stint, his second managerial stint, and hopefully, he got all of his health conditions figured out and that he's on the right. But, a year and a half dragging a guy, because I think he turned the Sox down initially, or turned Jerry down, and you drag him out. That's not what you wanted out of him.
Yeah.
That's not how it was supposed to go.
And I guess as it comes down to, the only hope that we have is that one day that these types of decisions won't be made. But my goodness gracious, what we look back and we go, what could have been, again, it's one player, and who knows how he develops in this organization versus going out to San Diego. But the talent is talent, and usually guys like that are superstar talent don't need the coddling to develop as maybe some other players do. So, again, in the long list of sad things that there is to be sad about as a White Sox fan, that's definitely one of them.
Yeah. Sean had a good comment here in our chat, which I appreciate. Robin was a great player. It's like the first Matrix. In my mind, nothing else came afterwards. And that's a good perspective. If you can compartmentalize, and you were a fan and were able to watch Robin play, which Pat, you and I did, and so many others did during those great early 90s teams. And he was on the South Side for a long time before he left for New York. I think just keep those playing days in your memory. Although Sydney's point on 2012, that 2012 team was very exciting. A lot of that was the Ozzie carryover, but Robin had those guys playing, and they were in first place for a long period of time. I think it was the last few weeks of the season where they got caught and surpassed, or they just couldn't finish the job. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how, if they're really committed to Venable, if he's really the guy, so whoever they had, whatever they did in terms of vetting a future manager, I would assume you'd have to say, I need somebody that's going to be around here for 5 to 7 years, to really see this thing through. But they're not signing a manager for 5 to 7 years. It was probably a rookie manager 3-year deal, right?
Usually that's the case these days. It's these 3-year deals, and then you see how it goes, and then you drop new papers, in the end of year 2. So you're not a lame duck manager or coach. But if you're, if I'm not a young manager or coach, I'm asking for more years because
definitely, yeah.
Because short of a some type of controversy or just really, really things have gone off the rails, I need time to get this right, and I can't be judged based on my win-loss record, right? That can't be what I'm looked at as. So I don't know. I wonder if Venable looks at it that way, or if he's just happy to have a job, or if he's like, man, by next year I got to figure out a way to get this team to win the games. Otherwise, this might be a one and done situation for me, which is kind of a sad thing when you're thinking about a guy's future like that. And I don't know but how do you manage better than he's managed? I don't really know because it's not like they're getting their doors blown off on a day in and day out basis. They're losing most games by a run or two. How do you manage your way to get another run or two every game? I have no idea.
I think that's then how do you use your bench? How do you tinker with the lineup? I think he went through a stretch where there were no copies of that lineup. I mean, it went on for a long period of time. Yeah. And I guess that's the type of team that the Sox are.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of consistents. They're trying things out constantly. Guys are being moved around on and off the IL, up from AAA, back down. Obviously, as Ozzie says, the bullpen, managing the bullpen is the biggest stressor.
Yeah.
If you got a solid lockdown bullpen, which we do not, clearly the numbers show that. And if you've been watching and listening, you realize that makes your job even harder.
Yeah.
So how you manage arms and all that period. But if you don't have anybody in the bullpen that you're comfortable and confident with, what does it matter?
It really doesn't matter, because at some point, you have to make a change, and you look down to that bullpen and you go, I'm kind of damned if I do, damned if I don't, but I can't let this poor bastard go out there anymore. Right? His arm's going to fall off.
He's going to need a body bag.
He is going to need a body bag.
So before we, do our quote of the week and say goodbyes, there's a last nugget that, we got to talk about. I think it happened earlier in the week. Tim Anderson was DFA'd by the Los Angeles Angels. And I don't believe any team has picked him up. At least I didn't pay attention or see anything. And discussing like the whole roller coaster, the trajectory, all of the stuff that's gone on with this White Sox organization, since 2016, 2017, and, the blip almost of excitement. 2020, 2021, Field of Dreams. Anderson was very much involved in that excitement. When we were, for that short period of time, on cloud 9, very short period of time, it seemed to be emerging as not only the face of the White Sox, but he wanted to be a face of baseball. Very outspoken. come after me mentality. Had some off the field stuff that who knows what really was going on. Nobody knows except for him and those people that it was going on with. Dealt with some injuries, and heavy is the head that wears the crown, I think.
Yeah.
And just could not sustain whatever he had built up with batting titles and the success with World Baseball Classic. But that one should be studied. People have talked about it. The rise and fall of Tim Anderson. Wow. So I don't know if anybody's going to take a chance on him, but it's sad. I will kind of watch a little bit to see if he picks up anywhere else, but obviously what's done is done when he leaves the White Sox. Just a curious case in my mind.
Yeah, it's sad, I guess I would say, would be the emotion I have about it. Not that I'm going to cry myself to sleep tonight, but it's really it's a sad situation to see someone that had become one really good at his craft, two was beloved by the fans in this town. Right? He was beloved here, and if you said an ill will about Tim Anderson and to a big TA fan, you're going to hear about it, right? If you go out there, and, I mean, you put anytime Tim Anderson in an error, you were the first one to say, Tim Anderson. What are you TE7? What are you?
He could not sometimes hit a first baseman to save his life.
He had those woes, but he was exciting. Someone that could run and someone that could, hit the ball out of the ballpark and drive a ball the other direction and played the game with a different attitude and energy than most guys do. The change the game stuff, all that was rolled into him. I just wonder if it got bigger than he could manage.
I think so. Yeah.
Like some people are built for that. Like you look at a guy, and I'm not comparing them by any means talent-wise. Just you look at a guy like a Shohei Ohtani that walks around like his shit doesn't stink, and he knows it, and he can back it up all the time, right? Yeah. It's like, this is who I am. It doesn't matter what happens or who's pitching or if I'm pitching or what. I am so much better than you are, and I can back.
But he also, though, he doesn't talk about, obviously there's a language situation, but he's not bringing the heat on himself.
True.
So I think there's a different level to that. But I agree with you. I mean, here's a guy that walks into a ballpark night after night, kind of like Trout was years ago. Like everybody knows you're supposed to be a thing, and you got to live up to it. And he does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating.
So it's a sad thing. I'd be curious to see who would pick him up, if anybody does, because if you're not doing all the things that made you before, you still are a less than average shortstop in terms of your defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah,
you don't have right now. You don't have much of a plus side, and it seems like you come with a lot of baggage. So it's sad to say, but his career may be very, very much in jeopardy.
Yeah, he was one of those first-round draft picks we talked about. I think he came up maybe in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He came up with the Sox, and so a little less than 10 years. I know 10 years service time is always an important thing for baseball players. So, we'll keep an eye on that. But that's just, the long line of curious situations. I think as you look at 2021, the last division championship team, it is a little curious of where are they now? We have had so few division championships and playoff experiences, and that was the one great thing from that. And I can't even say great, I guess positive.
Yeah.
from the rebuild, the most recent rebuild. I'm curious about those guys when they leave, like what happens to them. But I think Yohan Moncada might be the only one that's really doing much. I could be mistaken.
I haven't kept up with a Yohan Moncada.
Much is happening with Eloy. Abreu's not playing. Grandal might be on a team.
Was he
Lance
Pittsburgh,
Lynn retired.
possibly?
I didn't think he was. I didn't think he. Maybe he did. See, I
Which,
don't.
Just the fact that we don't really know, Nick, tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have to revisit that. Of where are they now? The 2021.
We might have some. We might have to do some filler shows as the year drags on, Nick.
It's going to be. Hey, we've got all of the rest of June, July, August, September. So hang in there. Hang in there, everybody. Keep enjoying those bobbleheads like I will this coming Sunday, June 8th. It's the Ray Durham bobblehead game. Nancy Faust will be there. I think that's one of her select Sundays. And I think it's also Southpaw's 21st birthday.
Happy birthday to Southpaw.
There's a huge tailgate party. I think Sox on 35th and maybe Shy, the Bums, the Chicago Sports Bums.
Okay.
I think that might be the combined tailgate. So a lot of fun things happening on Sunday, June 8th. Get out there, enjoy. Hopefully it's a beautiful day. Don't get there too early because I want to make sure I get my bobblehead, but just enjoy it. Enjoy the experience.
I'm jealous. I would love to have a Ray Durham bobblehead. So
Ray Durham, man. Ray Durham.
I'll have to just come over and play some shuffleboard in your basement and admire it.
Yeah. It will be on display in all of its glory. I think people they don't know Ray Durham. And they're looking at it, oh, it's a bobblehead. Kids are going to want to get it. But man, he was something. We didn't realize what we had when he was with us.
I agree. I can't wait to see it in your basement.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, folks, so much for joining us once again here Sunday night live. If you can do it, it means a ton on our Good Guys Talk Back YouTube channel. Subscribe, pass it along. The audio available absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. And thank you to all those that have continued to listen, have been with us for so many seasons. Thank you for hanging in there. Here is our quote of the week. It is from Will Venable. This was after the Baltimore series here this past weekend where the Sox were swept by the Orioles. We're doing a lot of things well to be in close games, Sox manager Will Venable said. At the same time, you've got to find ways to score runs. And it feels like a lot of these games we walk away saying, we pitched well, we defended well, we just really didn't score. We got to have a short memory with it. But remember that we're still in these close ball games, said Adrian Hauser, who allowed 3 runs in 6 innings and struck out 6. There might be a few mistakes that we're making here and there that we need to clean up. It's part of being a young team and being who we are. So Adrian Hauser jumping in as well in that quote of the week. But you hear that a lot, Pat, over these years. Short-term memory. I got to clean some things up. Little this, little that. Could have gone either way. I'm kind of done with all that. But again,
what
else are you going to say?
I am done with it too. I like how you have to have a short memory, but also remember that this is how it goes. You have telling us not to remember things, but also remember things in the same quote. And we have with our 9U team who won today, big win in Wilmington today. Went down to Wilmington and beat the crap out of the Wilmington, whatever they're called, by a run. Anywho, when the boys are having trouble, our coaches sometimes say to flush it. And I instantly go into like a fetal position and shake violently whenever I hear flush it.
Spurs them to change up their saying. Yeah.
But anyway, that's another great quote of the week. You could just put that on rinse and repeat and just change the name, whoever said it that week.
Yeah, it sure feels like that. Sydney, I'm going to try to sneak by the tailgate. I'm going to try to say hello to all the fine folks and what you're doing out there. but bobblehead is priority number one. So we'll see if I can do both.
Then you'll be leaving as soon as you get the bobblehead. You'll be getting your car.
Hopefully it's a great day weather-wise, and hear a little Nancy Faust and get a White Sox winner. So again, thanks so much for joining us once again. Hey, for Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.